Set. Hey, good morning, good afternoon. It is June 18th here in Las Vegas, where I'm broadcasting. This is Jim Lundy. This is Aragon Live. With me today, I've got Ken Delaney and Betsy Burton. Adam is off today. So we've got a lot to cover. We've got our great team here. I'm in Vegas at the NICE conference. I was at Cisco last week. We're going to talk about Cisco. Actually, first up, these are our shorts that we do instant analysis on. We post these Aragon Live podcasts on YouTube and link on our socials. So let's just jump in. Ken and I are going to talk about it. I was at the Cisco Live event. I got to say, I told Chuck Robbins, the CEO, probably their best product, Cisco Live, in 20 years. And the main reason isn't AI. The main reason is all their products now are going to work together with common interfaces, meaning you can look at the dashboards and see all the products. And even 3 or 4 years ago, when Ken and I were at the event, they started that, but they really have gotten to a point of much better harmony. And you had to kind of do that to make the AI work. And that's the next thing they announced, which is their AI Canvas, which is a network assistant. Now, I wrote a blog about this, but what's stunning about it is they developed their own deep research model, basically taking an LLM and customizing it. And, when you go out and look at a network, this is the problem that admins face. I've got an intrusion. Where is the intrusion?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can tell right away, and sometimes it can take you 6 days to 2 weeks to find out where the heck did it happen. So they've been testing it with customers, and they reran the incident with the AI Canvas network assistant, and it found it in 48 minutes. It took the team of experienced network admins, which, by the way, are hard to train and hard to get. It took it 48 minutes, and it took the other team 6 days. So not only does it do that, but it also paints a graph. It builds an analytics graph. So it's generative analytics, a custom dashboard of what the heck is going on. You can see the patterns of when the network went up and down relative to whatever the spike relative to the intrusion was, like a DDoS attack. And then it says, here's the suggested remediation. And it submits it to the human admin, the human in the loop, for approval. So blew people out of the water. No one saw this coming. They took Jitu Patel, who had been in charge of collaboration and security, promoted him a year ago to chief product officer, and he just kind of built this AI team that worked with all the divisions, and they kind of got their act together. Ken, any comments?
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is, of course, Cisco was, accelerating in the very beginning because of its move to these network switches, right, and routers. And I think that we're at a critical point for Cisco where they've embedded AI into their network, like you just talked about. And they're so dominant in that area. This is probably another big push, which almost everybody that owns Cisco networking will probably use this kind of product and give them, probably a leg up in depth of security offerings, et cetera. But I also want to add that they did some other things which I thought were really impressive. Workflow has been, something we've covered for years and years and years. But now they're really talking about agentic AI, where they're putting agents in workflow processes combined with humans. That's pretty good. Another thing that I personally cover, which is Wi-Fi, they now moved all their products up to Wi-Fi 7, which is another speed bump improvement. So Wi-Fi 7 now is mainstream for Cisco. That probably means some upgrades there for sure. But I agree with you. When I read the list of things, too many to cover today, this was a heck of a conference for them. Probably better than I've ever seen.
Yeah. There's, as I say, we're going to unpack this whole deep research LLM. I'm calling it deep research because that's what the other people call it. They didn't call it that, but it's their own, basically, reasoning LLM that is trained on the full stack. So that's no small feat to do that much training of an entire network environment across multiple products, including some of not. Now, one thing that one thing that kind of came out is that they got to play some catch up in firewall. I think Palo Alto Networks is kind of dominating there. That's what customers said. So they've got some catch up to do. And by the way, they said there's a lot more stuff coming.
Yeah. So the LLM they trained was just on the network experiences that they've gathered over the years, right? They didn't train it on a broad set of things.
No. It's mainly Cisco kit, but
Yeah.
they won't. They can look at the whole network, so they can see the other devices.
And just like Google is successful because of all the data they've collected in search, we should recognize that Cisco's deep into this area, and they had a lot of data to be able to train their models. So
the other thing, which was kind of cool, is and we could talk about it. They had the chief product officer of OpenAI, which I'm blanking on his name. He's now a board member, and he gave them accolades for their AI canvas. They also had the founder of LangChain, which LangChain is basically agent tools, including their graph and their analytics. So LangChain is basically like 70 million downloads. It can tell you what's going on performance-wise, like is there degradation of the LLM relative to, and also suggest accuracy. So there's a growing area of, I would call it, both generative and agent analytics, which I'm going to do some hot vendors on. So, I wrote 2 blogs, more coming on that because we got to really kind of start really looking at it. But generative analytics is a term I coined. They're definitely doing that. Mm-hmm. But that's just like the taste, right? Basically, it is a full assistant to a network admin. And so that's a role we hadn't forecasted, but that's now a new role. So how about that?
That's Beth, interesting.
You want to talk about this thing you're calling lake base?
Yeah, so we talked about this very briefly last week, but I really didn't have enough information at the time to really look at it very intensely. But I think people need to start really paying attention to some of these database providers like Databricks and Snowflake and some of the other ones that are sort of coming up in the industry. Lakebase is a new announcement that Databricks has come up with. It's basically a high-performance operational store, but I think one of the things that makes it more interesting is that it's really a distributed one made up of a bunch of technologies that already exist today. It's using things like Amazon S3 for storage. It's using Microsoft Blob for storage, Google Cloud for storage. It's leveraging Apache. It's also leveraging some other, open catalogs, for metadata, things like Data Glue, and the rest of them. So, but I thought what was interesting about this is, databases have always been these sort of tight, controlled environments in order to get the transaction integrity that people want. And what the organizations like Lakebase and Snowflake are doing is creating these more distributed architecture databases. And I think what was key about this one is this is the first time that Databricks is going directly against the established relational database providers, Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, the rest of them. And I thought that was a really interesting one. So people should pay attention to these guys. There is a concern that I have with any decoupled database architecture. Whenever you start doing layering on databases, you can get performance issues. And I don't think we completely understand the performance issues here, but it's worth paying attention to. I also am just now writing a note. It should be out in the next couple of weeks on architectures having to do with lake house. Databricks is supporting a lake house architecture, which is basically the same idea, but for data warehousing, highly decoupled, layered, using established technologies. So my message to people is the technologies they're using are all established. The architecture and the implementation is not established. So you need to run it through the same performance testing, transaction processing, data warehousing testing that you would any other new database product.
Betsy, if they're taking on the big guys, do they have conversion utilities? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what?
If they're taking on the big guys, do they have conversion utilities to migrate their Oracle? Do they have vector databases as well?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do vector databases. They've got, I mean, conversion isn't really the issue. I mean, they're layering on top of things so that they don't really need to convert. You're not gonna convert a whole bunch of established Oracle systems over to this. This is any new applications that are AI based.
Yeah. Well, and as always, one of the things that I've cautioned people on, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is people don't sometimes understand their costs. So the technology team races off and does it, and then the bill shows up.
I do want to do an advertisement for next week's Transform Tour. I'm doing a presentation on AI strategies and architectures, and I'll certainly be talking about this. And then Jim, you've got a presentation as well.
Yep.
What's your presentation?
My presentation is about planning and strategies for effectively implementing and training AI. So it'll be a lot on training agents, not just training humans. So the humans need to know what their objectives are to do automation, because really what this is automating procedures. It's not really that smart yet.
So I'll be covering the strategy and you'll be covering the implementation. Go, Jim.
Yep, I'm up for the assignment, Betsy. I'm up for it. All right, I got a couple, and then Betsy's got one, but they're all kind of interestingly tied together. So Google did have a cloud outage. It did affect people like Cloudflare, basically, and partially because the people that use APIs, there was a code problem that did affect APIs, which means people couldn't use Vertex or Google Cloud, GCP. We were never down, all right? So we have a production instance. We were never down, but we're not doing a lot of API calls. So the people that are doing Google Cloud and calling stuff, that's where it's impacted. So shame on Google. This was a technical problem that they caused, and they got to have better admin controls is kind of my take. All right, let's talk about Scale. So Scale has a phenomenal CEO, young guy. As Meta finalizes their basically 49% investment for $15 billion, the Scale CEO is leaving.
Whoa, really?
What?
The CEO's leaving?
Yeah, he's stepping away.
Interesting.
So
we mentioned him last week, but I didn't know that he was leaving.
Well, that's what is rumored. That's what is rumored. It's kind of like the whole Sam Altman, drama last year where he was going to quit.
Okay.
Is it forced or elected?
I couldn't hear you.
Is it coerced or elected that he's leaving?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think he's happy. I don't think he's happy. All right. So Google also had a big investment, and they're going to pause their planned investment. So they're going to pull their money back. So bottom line is, if you look at Amazon and you look at Meta/Facebook, they have to have more AI talent. There's also something that's tied to that, where Meta tried to offer one of the OpenAI executives a $100 million salary to leave OpenAI. And Sam Altman's talking about that actually today.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you're going to see more of this. There's definitely a lot going on with the live and die in AI. And it's also one of the things Y Combinator or YCP had their big, pitch fest this week. There's almost been zero companies from Y Combinator that have been successful in AI. Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Wow.
And so they're supposed to be the go all be all, funder of startups in Silicon Valley, and they've got almost a 0% batting average.
Wow. That's terrible.
Yeah. Now, Betsy, we're going to interrupt this discussion on AI to talk about summaries and Wikipedia.
So Wikipedia is put in place a pilot project, experimental project, to enable people to get summaries on Wikipedia pages using AI. And the editors and the people involved in Wikipedia have said they don't like this because they're running into a number of cases where AI is generating all sorts of hallucinations and issues and the rest of it. So they've paused this until they figure out what their strategy is going to be on this. It's interesting because I was just talking to my nephew this weekend, who's a fire chief here in California, and they're using AI to summarize their cases that, their interactions that they have with people. And they're really concerned about summaries because it's legally, their guys, their fire people are, their service people are not actually going out and rereading the summaries to make sure they're correct, and so they're just publishing them, and it's opening them up for lawsuits. So the problem that we have is that people, it's like the problem is that people are not checking their AI summaries. You've got to have a body, a person go in and make sure that AI is correct and correctly reflecting the summaries or the notes or whatever they are. You can't just accept those. So there's a whole governance issue related to that. So I thought it was interesting.
It's a big problem because you can imagine the speed at which this stuff gets out is so fast. Somehow, and I've said this before, we need to be able to tag anything you send out with an electronic leash so it can be pulled back. And until we have that, misinformation is going to dominate far more than the correct information. I'm quite worried about it. And I think this.
Well, imagine you're an emergency response person. You're using AI to summarize an event that you're attending, and the AI has hallucination about some condition the person had or the state of the person, and the paramedic just lets that go legally, come back some later date and says your notes say this and this and this. That's going to hold them up to a problem. So it's not just the data getting out, it's the data generated for any usage.
Nobody reads the correction after the story is published, so to speak. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to some of the things going on with the changing landscape of things like search and speaking of AI summaries. So one of the things that's happening, and we did talk about it a lot with Google rolling out their AI summaries, and also search tools like Perplexity, people using those tools for search. And it's basically what sources are the AI summaries using to come up with their summary. So SEO, search engine optimization, is dying because you're not being able to influence the crawler. And so now there's this kind of like LLMO, like large language model optimization, very, very early days. And the other question is, well, what do you do about ads? And as Ken pointed out, Meta is going to put ads in their messaging tool because that's where a lot of people are. So I would expect to see more messaging ads start to appear because people are not going to leave their messaging. They're leaving maybe browser-based search because, and they're going to get these summaries. So will ads appear in the summary? And I would probably say they will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think 3 years from now, the whole browser will be totally different because the economics to keep it going the way it is there are fading away.
So guess what? Today, Adobe, and I'll probably have to write a blog about it, announced a tool for LLM optimization for kind of like, basically AI optimization for websites. So it's not out; it's in preview, but there's going to be a whole market for that. All webmasters and commerce teams are going to have to change because it's going to impact retail, right? You're going to search for a dress, and you're going to get summarization of this is a site that has the dress. So everybody should be like kind of on call, like this is a wake-up call, like your world just changed.
Mm-hmm.
And you still got time, but you got to get on this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue with OpenAI and Microsoft tensions are high, and team, you can pick, jump in. One of the things that's causing it to be high is two things. One, OpenAI coding up to Oracle for data center in Texas. That was from months ago. And now OpenAI, I guess, is finalist in a $200 million DoD contract, that's Microsoft's turf.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's here's the thing, OpenAI is making money.
Yeah.
So they're feeling bold.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I'm almost going to go back to the discussion on Databricks. I almost think there is a rumbling of AI, AI native vendors, providers that are starting to really challenge some of these big big vendors, and they kind of underestimated them.
Well, the problem is Microsoft can't really sell. I mean, OpenAI can sell the ingredient. Microsoft sells a solution. And probably what DoD was saying, we want to build our own hyper secret, nobody knows what's going on, LLM. We don't want to have a commercial one. And that's probably what made OpenAI attractive to them over Microsoft.
Yeah. Okay, so related to that, I've started a blog series, and I'm definitely going to be blogging about this, but this is from late May, and it's just kind of making the rounds now because people are analyzing what happened. So a company in the UK called Builder.ai, they've collapsed and kind of gone into receivership. Two things happened. One is they did not manage their costs, and outstanding bills for 80, 90 million from Amazon and 20 to 30 million from Microsoft. And reported revenues were way under half of what they reported. So 100 million in revenue for like 2023 might have been only 50 million. So lying about revenues. So their auditors called them out, and they have gone into receivership. So two big lessons learned: don't lie about your revenue, and manage your costs. Right? These cloud costs are massive. These are massive, and there's no startup that can make money if you're going to run on those things unless you have massive, massive scale. And most companies are not going to get to scalability. OpenAI got there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most of the others have not gotten there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big challenge: is to live and die in AI. I mean, look at scale. We just talked about scale. Scale's getting bought out. Most of the people doing a lot of heavy AI will be bought.
Yeah.
They will not survive. They do not have to go to market. And look, product-led growth, meaning selling online, is very, very hard to do, which is why 99% of the firms can't do it. All right, so I'll blog about that. There's a lot of lessons learned from that, but running on cloud, I want to say this to everybody listening to this podcast, cloud is a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Cloud is a security risk, but cloud is very, very costly. Look, I ran a workload on Amazon almost 14 years ago, and with no customer data, and the bill was almost $80,000 with no customer data. And so we turned that sucker off right away.
And it sneaks up on people. I mean, that's the problem. Is it's almost like, I hate to say, it's almost like a drug.
It is.
It sneaks up on people, and before they know it, they're doing more transactions and more interactions and more data in there, and the costs explode. Yeah.
And by the way, so I'm just going to jump to the next one because it does tie into two of the publicly traded companies in intelligent contact center that are leaders in our report, Five9 and NICE, both within the last week have announced their agentic AI agent offerings. Right, so they sell agents for contact center. And we'll see how they are. They just both announced them. I saw a demo of one of them. I'll probably see a demo today because before I leave, I'm going to maybe hit the show floor. But that's good. But one of the things I just will tell you, because I had about 200 people in my presentation yesterday, I asked everybody how many had turned on the basic agent called Agent Assist. And that's the agent that can whisper in the customer support reps, the human agents here, and say, I found a knowledge article for you. I think this is the article. Only one out of those 200 people had turned it on. Mm-hmm. And I asked him to comment. He goes, it's a game changer. Turn it on. It's unbelievable. And so it was shocking that all these people, the basic AI agent, they had not turned it on. So I saw that they had a homework assignment. And I said, look, there's your example. He just said it's amazing. But that was kind of shocking that few people had really gone that far. And so we had a good discussion, but I just said, look, this is an automation play. AI is automation. It's an automation play. That's all it is. Answering questions is an automation. That's it. Mm-hmm. You have to give the right answer.
I mean, all this got combined with the announcements from Cisco as well. Looks like this is clearly a hotbed of activity is in these agent automations through AI.
Yeah, and by the way, Cisco, we didn't cover that, but Cisco announced basically AI agent templates. So it kind of gets into basically the idea is you can have agentic templates now for certain types of flows.
And I think a lot's going to happen here. We talked about Google's offerings at Google I/O about voice translation. I think that's going to be really important as you have to get workers from foreign countries, that may not speak English. So I think that there's this area is going to really be rich and changing.
But I wonder, you guys, we've talked a lot over the last couple of years, and Jim, I'd be interested in your thought here. We've talked a lot over the last couple of years about business transformation versus automation. Automation is automating what you're doing versus business transformation is actually reimagining your business, into new business models. How much are we automating and so focused on that we're not actually looking at the transformation that we need to be doing to really enable long-term automation? I almost feel like we're starting to create a house of cards, all this automation, but we're not actually taking time to rethink our business.
Focus on cost. That's all they care about right now.
Right, exactly. And that's not going to get people where they really need to in the long term. I think it's a challenge worth a blog. Do you want to take on that precisely? Jim?
Yeah, so look, the Precisely basically is making some news relative to their data integrity suite. So it kind of so basically, one of the things that's going on.
Jump in on that one, Jim?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can cover that one. So Precisely is a highly enhanced enterprise transformation loading company. They've been around for a number of years, primarily used for data consistency, data integrity. They're sort of competing with people like Informatica and Workato and the rest of them. What Precisely is now doing, which I'm finding in a lot of cases, is they're applying AI to their data integrity and data transformation. It makes sense to me that you would start to have an AI agent that would offer advice as to what sort of transformation and data integrity problems you might have. It's also, potentially a challenge because you've got a black box that is giving you advice on data transformation. It made me think of when I was writing some stuff about Lakebase. Databricks. Databricks is using AI to give advice about indexing. So we're seeing these data movement and data transformation and data providers using AI to actually run and give advice about the data and the formatting of the data within the database. It's great. It's cool. But again, it is an agent giving you advice. You better still know what your data is. So there we go with my rant. Jim, you were going to talk about Operant.
Yeah, we jumped ahead. So Operant is going to basically, for these MPC servers, which are basically allowing for agentic agents to work together, they're going to provide a runtime defense. This is going to be part of a growing category that we've identified as agentic identity and security platforms. So Operant announced something, now. Cisco announced stuff last week. A company we cover called Brightive announced the week before, and we announced the week before. So we're basically 2.5 weeks in on agentic identity security, and it's blowing up. And Operant is just one of the firms that are doing that. So we're probably going to do a hot vendor report on this too. So wild times. Adam is off, so I'll do the last one. So Mistral, which, as you know, is European, launched their enterprise coding assistant. They announced it on June 4th, I believe. And, by the way, at the same time, Microsoft GitHub announced their coding agent, right? They're calling it a coding agent. At the same time, while, Google is throwing down with their Gemini coding agent. So the war is on for coding agents, and they're pretty good. But I would just say that they're great at basic and they're great at QA, basically reviewing code. But you're for a lot of basic coding, you're going to have an agent that will do it for you. That's really the trend.
And we should bring up something we've talked about in past sessions, that once this code is put together and operational, it consists of a lot of elements written by many different parties. And we really need tools to be able to go back to these applications when something goes wrong and say, are we using this particular API? And most coders will say, I don't know, we wrote it with an AI system. We need to be able to document and trace APIs that were put together in code.
Yeah. Okay, so look, we just covered a lot of ground. Everything from new network assistants to lake bases to Meta making an acquisition to the challenge of SEO and the possibility that SEO doesn't matter. That might be a great blog that I will do today. So we're recording this. We're going to have it up on Aragon Live. And yeah, it's going to be a good recording. So I'll be writing something about NICE's announcement. So we got a lot of blogs out there on aragonresearch.com. This recording will be up on our YouTube channel. In fact, as soon as I get the recording, I'm posting this today because this is a hot one. And I want to thank the team. And everybody have a great rest of June. All right. Summer is almost here. Thank you, everybody.